Welcome to the Saga, the Clone Saga, aka the Clone Zone, or whatever we're calling it at the time. This is the podcast from the students of S.H.I.E.L.D. talking about the Spider-Man Clone Saga, which we're done with, but there are so many retreads and revivals and nostalgic looks and alternate takes that we have a ways to go still. And in fact, this podcast may never end. My name is Vincent, and who is joining me today?
I'm Matt.
I'm Mike, and welcome to Season 3, everybody.
Yeah, I guess you could kind of look at it that way. Season 1 would be like 2 episodes of the original Clone Saga.
Hey, we got green. Look at it that way.
Yeah, and then we had a giant 50 or like 45 episodes of Season 2, and now we're on Season 3.
Well, it was a weekly show.
Yep. So our sponsor this week, I don't have a prop with me. It would take too long to grab it. Is the upcoming Speedball Complete Collection for Marvel Comics.
And Vince, how much did you pay for your Speedball issues to make that complete collection?
Yeah, so I never would have expected Marvel to. I mean, I guess it's someone expected. It is still Steve Ditko. It's not really that good, Steve Ditko. But
would we have had it pre-Ditko death?
I don't know. I'm not sure if that actually affects it a ton. I mean, you do have to consider that. I guess they're collecting it because maybe that New Warrior show will eventually happen. Maybe. But I never expected that a Speedball collection would come out. So I started tracking down the issues myself to custom bind and make my own Speedball omnibus. And in fact, the Speedball series itself is only 10 issues. So I can say I paid $12 for it. $12 for the 10 issues from 1988. So that's not terrible. I don't feel
call it the Speed Bulbous.
I don't feel too bad. But I will probably sell them. And in fact, maybe I'll be able to sell them for more. Who knows?
Vince, if we did edit the videos afterwards, just what's that eBay account you can find Vince at? Buy Vince's shit at ebay.com/seller/
something. I'll put it in the description if I feel like it. So today we are talking about.
I'll personalize it for you.
We're talking about the 6-issue Clone Saga miniseries from 2009, which is an abridged but also alternate telling of the saga, which took almost 2 whole years originally. This series is not canon at all, as we will explain. And I really am not certain why Marvel thought this was a good idea. I guess the clone nostalgia was hitting. This is almost a dozen years later. But maybe it lines up a little bit because this is about the same time that Kane is brought back into the Spider-Man books, which we'll get to in.
This is also going on. This took place during Dark Reign, right?
During it.
Well, I can see why they would publish this because they do a lot of stuff with Osborn. So.
Yeah, and
there's a lot going on in that era with marriage also.
Yeah, and there are Siege ads. Well, the marriage is over. This is 2009.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Well, wait. When does one moment in time happen though?
I don't think One Moment in Time has happened yet because I think that's after Grim Hunt. I think One Moment in Time is like one of the final Brand New Day era arcs.
It is, but so is Grim Hunt. I'm not sure exactly what the order is.
I mean, Grim Hunt. I think it's after Grim Hunt. So, this is written by Tom DeFalco and Howard Mackie, 2 of the evil masterminds behind the original Clone Saga. DeFalco is still writing Spider-Girl at this point. I think her series at this point is called Spectacular Spider-Girl, and in fact, it may even be coming out initially in digital at this point, and then getting like chopped up and recollected in single issues later.
Getting those old Marvel Digest volumes.
Yeah, so it's not nearly as popular as it once was. We're like over 100 issues into Spider-Girl, but Tom DeFalco is kicking it. Howard Mackie Now this is really interesting when I was looking into this. Howard Mackie hasn't written a comic at this point since 2002, 7 years ago. And that project in 2002, it wasn't Spider-Man, it was the Brotherhood. And the Brotherhood, I don't know if either of you have ever heard of this. As I explain it, it might jog the memory. So the Brotherhood is a very strange, obscure X-Men spinoff. And it kind of stars like a weird version of Brotherhood of the Evil Mutants. And it was credited, instead of crediting a writer, it said writer : X. And it was this stupid experiment to see if a book without a credited writer would succeed in the market. Because this was 2002, so it's kind of the point where the comic community is kind of turning around, where now it's not the art that's selling the books as much with like the flashy image era. It's more, okay, there are all these up and coming writers like Bendis and Brubaker's around the corner and Jeff Johns. And so now people are starting to follow writers, which I feel like would be a good thing from the editorial standpoint. It's like, oh, fans are now finding a new way to follow books and sell them and everything like that. But whatever, they wanted to do this.
Well, I mean, and I'm sure part of it was also just embarrassment of having Howard Mackie writing your book.
Yeah. So here's the thing. The reveal that it was in fact Howard Mackie, that literally happened yesterday, November 9th,
Yeah, I
by
saw that.
Brian Cronin on CBR.
What the? Wow, that's a weird.
So this is a weird timely coincidence.
Well, that's a weird case of what does it call it? Synchronicity. That's weird.
Because I remember like always, like that was always like one of the dumbest mysteries. The super obscure series that the thing is, it ended up working because that is what sold the book. It wasn't the experiment that no one was credited. Well, it's not a successful experiment.
Okay.
Because the fact that it's not credited is what marketed the book, which kind of defeats the purpose of the experiment. It's really weird. But obviously that book is totally irrelevant, has never been collected. I don't really know anything about it. Allegedly, it was like canceled due to 9/11 because they didn't want a book starring terrorists. But I think, I mean, I said 2002, but obviously cover date versus release date. But I think 9/11 would have happened way before the book was canceled. So I don't fully understand that. Maybe they just had a lot of issues in the bag that they put out. I mean, obviously things are made like 3 months ahead of time at least. But that really weird. But before that, Howard Mackie finally stopped writing Spider-Man around 2001. His last issue was Amazing Spider-Man Volume 2, 29, before J. Michael Straczynski takes over. Mm-hmm. And the artist here is Todd Nauck, who he was one of those guys who kind of just floated around Image for a few years in the 90s on like random shit and no one cared a ton, I think. And his big break was drawing almost all 55 issues of Young Justice with Peter David. And then he eventually reunites with Peter David for Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man around the Civil War Back in Black era after Mike Wieringo left that book. And some of us also know him for his work on Nightcrawler with Chris Claremont.
Right.
And so the whole creative team, they're all known for Spider-Man, so it makes sense for them to be here. Obviously, DeFalco and Mackie, it's a little bit more than that. They're known for the Clone Saga. So let's jump right into issue 1. Oh, yeah. And we start with an editorial from DeFalco, catching us back up on the status quo of 94, 95, whenever the hell the Clone Saga started.
Pre us being born.
Yes, because we did celebrate that on the podcast.
Yeah.
So mentioned are Harry's death, Maximum Carnage, the parents coming back, Aunt May getting ill, and the very beginnings of the Clone Saga. And then we get a couple pages of that exact same recap once we actually get into the comics. And already things are different and weird because Aunt May, and the full reveal of this happens later. So at first it's just really confusing. But when Aunt May like really falls ill, she was on the phone with Ben Reilly, who is posing as a distant relative, and I don't know how that works.
Right, like May just doesn't know her family, or accepts that, okay, sure, you're related to me or something. I don't.
It's like a creepy anonymous pen pal that's like claiming to be someone. Like I assume that he just totally randomly called her up out of the blue. I mean, I guess this happens.
Right, like, is this better or worse than what he does in canon? Because he still has the whole phone conversation with her. And doesn't. I don't think he posed as her relative.
Well,
So
yeah,
is this better or worse?
That's what I was trying to remember. How did he?
I like this better.
How did he figure out about the illness before?
I
don't even remember.
I can't remember.
It was somehow related to having his phone relationship with her. It was related to that somehow.
Okay.
I think he might have called one time and got Aunt Anna or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't remember. And very quickly into this story, MJ discovers her pregnancy. Because again, we're condensing.
Well, things are happening so fast in these issues.
We're condensing what was 2 years, which shouldn't have been 2 years. It should have been way shorter. But even still, we have 6 issues, which is probably way shorter than even they originally intended. And Kane. All right, here's another question compared to the original and everything. Did Kane set off Pete's / Ben's spider sense before, or was that probably not consistent? I don't remember that.
Man, I don't know.
But it shouldn't, in my opinion, right?
Yeah, sure.
Like Spider-Man wouldn't set off his own spider sense. Whatever. And then we quickly get the iconic rooftop scene. Would you guys say this is an iconic scene of the Clone Saga?
It's a big one.
Yeah. Yes. I would.
And again, it's still stupid because Ben's like, I gotta get out of here before I run into Spider-Man. Let me go up to the roof where Spider-Man is really going to land before he switches clothes. And then like it's immediately different, and a lot of this is the compression, but they quickly catch up, and there's already a lot of banter, and we're just skipping all of the tension.
Yep.
They don't trust each other and are getting in misunderstanding fights.
Well, I like this just because like it instantly works. Just because like, okay, whatever. Well, you're not attacking me, but Kane is, so
yeah,
team up.
And Kane gets a little meta about it, and so does Pete, where they're like, well, I didn't expect it to go that way. We just got along perfectly.
Yeah, and I kind of liked it. I think it makes sense that, he'd get along with himself.
Yeah. But then things get really weird because a fungus appears with no explanation. Like, again, it's similar to like the Ben Reilly calling on the phone thing, where this fucking weird thing happens and then they don't explain it until like 10 pages later. Which is not necessarily bad. You're just confused as hell for a second. But it was Kane who summoned this fungus out of nowhere. He also throws a water tower at them and a car.
But not a chimney.
Yes, he does punch a chimney, though.
Oh, yeah, he does?
Well, yes. we're getting there.
We'll get there.
The fungus is weak to fire, like venom. And again, it's before the Kane thing. So there are like 2 moments in this story where I'm like, are they going to bring in venom? Ben is able to get his stupid fungus off, but it keeps expanding on Peter. So of course Ben's like, instead of saying like, oh, let's just create a quick bonfire or grab a torch, which may be somewhere in a hospital, let's swing all the way to wherever and jump into the smokestack together.
Right. It could have literally done anything else, but okay, fine.
I think it's kind of funny though.
Yeah.
And then it's better because they crawl out of the smokestack and just immediately shake hands. They're like, hey, what's up, bro? It's like, here's our status quo now.
Yeah.
And Kane kind of expected them to get along well, and he's working for some mysterious boss. And I think the mystery, it's only a mystery because it doesn't go as we expect, but the mystery does build here, and there are like two switcheroos, and I think they sort of work.
Sure.
Do you guys feel like this first issue read faster than any of the other ones?
Maybe.
Not really. Like I didn't particularly care for the fight scene with the fungus, but
yeah, the fungus is stupid as shit.
For me, it's like this whole series is a tale of the first 3 issues read really fast, and the last 3 issues read a little bit longer than the others.
Well, while we're saying that, how would you compare the pacing of these issues from the original Clone Saga? And it's worth comparing because we have some of the same exact writers.
Well, I think it's interesting that the intent behind this series is to condense the Clone Saga into 6 issues. Why does it still feel like there's filler in it? The whole Doc Ock plot. What is going on?
Yeah, we'll get there.
You just take that out.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous.
Also, the pacing is so rapid because it's an abridged that it almost reads like you also have to have like a strong familiarity with the Clone Saga itself, because like we open up in issue 2 and it plays the way I read it. It plays it off like Trial of Peter Parker kind of happened already and stuff. Like we have all this, like they've been fighting Kane for months, so like they can be like, well, all that stuff you read still happened, but maybe some things were changed. But then I go to that image of like, well, if this is abridged, why does it still feel like I'm missing things?
Yeah, there are definitely things that happen between issues. So yeah, there's the time jump, issue 2. Ben is now in the Scarlet Spider costume with the hoodie. He's fighting. We open this issue with him fighting Kane, and we get references to Jon Stewart and Tim Gunn as men who dress well.
Yeah, there's some dated pop culture references in here.
Yeah, well, but the thing is, are they dated for 2009 or dated for 1994? Or are they not dated for 1994?
They're dated. I mean, I feel like the Tim Gunn one is pretty dated even for like 2009.
Yeah. Also,
Jon Stewart was still. I mean, Daily Show was a big thing always. So
Ben Reilly lets it slip through a shitty reference that the Hulk TV show existed in the Marvel Universe, or at least this version. But we also get several explicit references to the Hulk himself in this series.
Yeah, that raises so many questions.
Well, the thing is, I'm not sure if the Hulk TV show has been referenced in like the main continuity, but it kind of follows because like Marvel Comics exists in Marvel Comics, and like Stan Lee just writes stories of Spider-Man, or well, whoever at the time.
Sure, but like I don't know, making a TV show about this monster that tore up New York the other day. I kind of
Yeah, it's weird, but it's the usual thing where it's like that's weird and cool.
Yeah.
And like a bit into this second issue, this is where I kind of had the moment where it's like I kind of love how this series is going. My opinion is that it's not written well.
No.
It's really not, but it's written in like this weird nostalgic camp level that I like in my superheroes. Like it feels not Silver Agey, but like a B tier 80s book or something. And it's similar to those 90s issues written by these same people, but it's a little different. And I don't really understand I'm not sure how to explain that or what I mean. I think a lot of it is that just the general tone is different, and some of that has to do with the compression, but we get hardly any of the angst. There's no real anger in this series from like the heroes.
Mm-hmm.
It just feels like way more like campy and what you would expect when you think of the superhero genre, like kind of an idealized version of that.
And especially Spider-Man.
Yeah, the banter and the relationship between Ben and Pete, and even like the villains quipping and stuff. It's cheesy, but it's not like super bad cheesy.
No,
I
it's
don't. I kind of dig the writing in the series,
prefer
even though it's
this.
not good. But other time skip things, catching up with the status quo in issue 2. Ben has blonde hair. He works at the Daily Grind with Shirley, Devin, and Buzz. So it was nice. It was nice seeing all that. Norman, or whoever the mysterious boss is, he makes MJ sick too, which makes Kane punch a chimney.
Yes.
Which,
Also, it's Doc draws this Kane punching a chimney panel really well.
yeah.
I like that a lot.
And
What did you think of his cane? I thought his cane was pretty good.
Yeah.
the doctors are stumped because it's a genetic issue that is facing both MJ and Aunt May. But of course, they aren't related. And Pete's like, well, I'm not even related either, which isn't entirely relevant. But also, this is a really dumb moment. But Matt,
Yeah.
how is Peter related to Aunt May?
Uncle Ben is his dad's brother.
Okay. Yeah, so Pete has no blood relation to
No blood relation at all.
Right.
Okay. And the word
Wait. Unless it's
don't.
it's that one book that we don't talk about.
Oh God.
I have to read. You're really
This
lucky.
could be that universe. We don't know.
Yeah, you're really lucky. There's no like weird clone connection to that. I may have to double check that.
I mean, you don't have to. I feel no need to read.
Is that Marvel?
There's trouble.
Trouble.
That's trouble. Okay, I always forget the two.
So also the doctor uses the word deterioration, which I was like, oh, that's a major clue, and it kind of is because it kind of isn't. I was expecting something very different with the result of this. But Kane just immediately turns face, and it's like, yo, Spider-Man, let me help you out.
He doesn't fully go face. He's more of a tweener.
He leads them to his boss and through traps, including goop monsters, which
Yeah, but they're fighting them again in like issue 4.
Yeah, in this issue, it's not clear that they're the goop monsters. We get the goop monsters later, but it's the exact same thing. But this is again a moment where I'm like, okay, is Venom gonna come out of nowhere? But he did not. But the boss, or at least whoever he leads them to, is not Osborn. It's the Jackal, and it's the exact same costume from the '90s, which is great with like all the zippers.
It's terrible. It's so bad.
Great's not the word I'd use, but it exists.
Great because like they remember to use that shitty costume.
And he binds up all 3 of them and makes another clone after Peter and Ben. They kind of like there's a hint. It's like, oh wait, Kane's a clone, and this new clone has this weird white and blue costume, which I think the originals just had the Spider-Man costume, or they had like civilian clothes. But it was weird.
It had like all kind of variations of Spider-Side's costume though.
Yeah. And issue 3, I like this cover. We have Gwen in silhouette with Pete swinging.
Yeah, there are a couple covers that I actually like, kind of really liked. This one's one of them.
I think Spider-Man looks weird on this cover. I don't love it. I like the Gwen in the background and the cityscape, but the Spider-Man looks weird to me on it.
The covers for this series are really weird because, again, I like a lot of them. I think each issue the cover is by a different artist, and I don't think any of them are Todd Knock. And also, as we go later on, I'll point out that half of these covers have no connection. Like, they don't represent what's in the book at all.
No.
There are inconsistencies. And into issue 3, the Jackal has made even more clones, and so this is the maximum clonage moment, basically. and Ben or Pete or someone makes a reference that says that their family, quote unquote, makes the Sopranos look like the Cosbys. And
Yeah, that's a fun one.
yes, Cosby jokes don't hold up. And then Jackal, he clones Gwen, which really ticks off Kane, which I didn't 100% understand this part. Like, Kane is very mad that Gwen Stacy
Well,
is.
Kane is the one true love that Gwen is the one true love that Kane had. So that's why.
Right. Kane says something about how her memory is the only one that's not like
It's pure. It's like not
yes,
tarnished or anything.
which is weird, but okay. I mean, I kind of buy it, I guess.
Whatever.
Yeah, he gets mad enough to break free of him, to break himself free, and then chops, karate chops open Pete and Ben.
But another ongoing thing in these episodes, we get naked Gwen Stacy again.
Yep. A little more tasteful than before when like Liam Sharp was doing it and stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot more smoke this time.
Yeah. All of the hundreds of clones dissolve, and instead of thinking, "Oh, I'm just a shitty scientist," the Jackal's like, "Well, I don't have an explanation, so I think Pete's the clone."
Yep.
And, but we quickly forget about all that shit because Kane just murders the Jackal,
Yeah.
which I thought was cool.
Yeah.
He tosses them the antidote and then gets away. So at the end of this issue, May and MJ are totally fine. May meets Ben Riley. Pete doesn't, and then the big part is that clone question finally comes up of like, who is the clone? And Pete's like, I don't really care.
Yeah.
Which took us like several months in the original Clone Saga. But we do get some status quo shifts because he gives the suit to Ben as he's retiring to be a father.
Which is funny because we'll see the Ben Riley Spider-Man suit later.
Yeah, that's a weird part, but obviously that's an eternal debate. But if you're gonna go this, like, as far as can he be a father and Spider-Man, but if you're gonna go this route, like, these few pages I thought were pretty solid.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like how this was resolved. I mean, I think you'll all agree with me. I like how this was resolved much better than how it worked in the Clone Saga proper.
Yeah, and it turns out Kane didn't fully turn face because he's working for Norman, maybe,
Well, it's someone with cornrows.
and he stole some tech and a clone pod from the Jackal. Issue 4. This cover has someone back in the hoodie and someone wearing the classic Spider-Man costume, and they're tangling with Dr. Octopus arms.
I don't think we see the Ben Riley Spider-Man costume in any of the covers.
Yeah, we don't, and which is the opposite, kind of in the books. So these covers don't make sense at all.
It's probably because they intrinsically think that more people identify the Clone Saga to the Scarlet Spider suit than the Ben Riley Spider-Man suit.
Yeah, but
That's probably true.
again, having waded through the whole damn thing, like he wasn't in the hoodie for a really long time.
No, really not.
Because as we get into this issue, Ben now has his version of the suit, which again doesn't connect because Pete gave him the original suit, so
he could have modified it.
Yeah,
well, it doesn't make sense because Pete has an original has his costume later.
Yeah, but I mean, Spider-Man has more than one costume. It would get pretty funky. And he's fighting Otto. Aunt May is totally healthy, and he's living with Pete. She's living with Pete and MJ. Ock is working for Norman, quote unquote Norman, with Kane as the intermediary. And then this is the weird part. This is another part that just didn't fit in this story, in my opinion, at all. Shirley sets Ben up with a date with a woman named Beth, who quickly reminds him of his own girlfriend from before, Elizabeth Tyne or whatever her other fake names are.
Lost years.
And then this just like doesn't go anywhere, and there's not really a point to it. It's just like 3 pages that are pointless.
Yeah, just filler.
Yeah. And Beth has dark hair, so I was really like, all right, are we going to see the return of Jessica? But no.
And
So
no
obsessed.
one likes Jessica the way you do.
He really digs her for some reason. I don't know why.
Otto gets his last science thing, and he just trounces Ben Reilly. But Ben tracks him to see Kane almost murdering Otto. So Kane is just
Well,
trying
before
to
that,
murder all the villains.
we got a lovely exchange between Buzz and Ben about the internet.
Yep. I mean, if Kane is killing the Jackal and possibly kills Otto, I mean, he kills Otto in the actual Clone Saga, but it's still a step above. What was it? Was the Grim Hunter? No, what was his name? Was it the Grim Hunter?
Was the Grim Hunter
Kane's stupid.
when they were making Kane, or they were booking Kane really strong. He would just snap people's necks at the end of arcs.
And Ben, accidentally, Kane throws Otto in front of some webbing, so Ben has to rip away the webbing from his mouth before he chokes to death, which allows Kane to get away.
Wait, isn't Spider-Man's webbing breathable though?
Yes. Yep. Yeah. It usually is.
Yeah, he said that. So
maybe it's like really, really dense webbing.
Maybe it was impact webbing, and you can't breathe through.
Maybe it was impact webbing.
And then the final page reveal in this issue, the final parts of this issue are like, what the hell's going on? Because the mysterious boss is maybe not Norman because he clones Norman, unless this is Norman cloning himself, which would be pretty funny.
I thought this is what it was at first, and then like the reveal happens, and you're like, oh, okay.
So issue 5, again, these covers don't make sense. This has Ben in the hoodie costume again, but I like this cover. It's MJ, or at least I definitely love like the setup of the cover, if not the specific art. But it's MJ on the ground with Pete and Ben like unconscious or implied dead, maybe around her.
I like the cover a lot.
Yeah, it's good.
I think the beginning of this issue is fun, where it's a real close-up shot, and you assume that Pete and Ben are like dealing with some kind of villain or
I like this.
Whatever the hell, and zoom out, and they're building baby furniture.
Yeah, it's fun.
Also, they remembered to include Peter's long hair because he was rocking that mullet at this time.
Yeah, he got a bit of a mullet going on. I don't know. I always like little scenes like this with Ben and Peter hanging out.
And MJ is out with Aunt May at.
Oh wait a minute, real quick. We can't pass up on this. Ben refers to the coming baby as little Ben.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was great because we have our
own. We'll get to what he wants her called later, though.
Yeah. Well, he's pushing for the baby to be called Ben if it's a boy, and MJ is like, if it's a girl. I thought this was a nice moment too, where MJ's like, if it's a girl, I want her named after someone very special or something, and she's sitting with Aunt May.
Mm-hmm.
But she goes into labor while she's out with Aunt May, and they call up Pete and Ben, and so Pete puts his suit back on, and the two of them are in costume because that's a fast way to get to the hospital.
From Queens, there's no buildings to zip on.
But the asshole Kane shows up, and this scene was weird in my opinion because Ben is like, I can handle this. You have a wife in labor, just go to the hospital. If I really need help, you can come back after the baby's born. And Pete's like, you're right, I'm gonna go. But then a second later, he's like, actually, I'm not, and I'm gonna fight Kane with you while my wife's in labor.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was weird.
It's
And
really
Allison Mongrain showed up.
yeah. Well, before she does, they see and hold the baby in this series.
Well,
Which
I mean, no, she showed up at this point.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
they introduced her as the specialist.
Yeah. But they like the baby is born. We see it completely. We see its face.
Its hideous face.
And
Yeah, it's the head is bigger than the body itself.
Pete is in fact there at this in this version, and he touches and holds the baby, which is totally different from the Clone Saga, where it's like pretty ambiguous of like what happened immediately after the baby was born and what interaction they have with it. But Alison Mongrain takes it, and also another change here, and this was some of my back and forth confusion when we read the original story. The rest of the hospital is totally not in on it, whereas we had a creepy doctor in the Clone Saga. And so they're like, well, we did all the background checks. I don't know how the fuck this random woman stole your child. And instead of handing the baby over to Norman Osborn, she hands it to Kane on the docks. And the mysterious boss has Norman put the goblin mask on. Like that's totally what it's supposed to be in the end of this issue, but that's really not what happens. I don't think the end of this issue entirely works.
No, I'm gonna be honest. I don't think the back half of this series really works.
Yeah. And someone who's the Green Goblin comes across Ben Reilly, and he jokes that everyone who wears that mask dies.
He's not wrong.
And
Phil's still kicking.
Yeah, Phil's good. In the final, wait, is he?
I think so.
Okay. I don't know if I'm not sure how last happened to it. The final page, whoever this Green Goblin is, stabs Ben through the back with the glider, which again, I would say one of the most iconic moments of the Clone Saga.
Yeah, but here's the thing. On that panel, do you notice how they censor it?
No.
Oh, yeah. They put the sound effect over where the blade will come through his
You can still
stomach.
see some of the gore shooting out. So clearly that was like a thing that was like, okay, that's too much for the book. So you can clearly see that they just like photoshopped the sound effect in there over it, because you can clearly see like under like behind it that Nock clearly drew the glider piercing through.
It literally looks like someone just like dropped it in.
That was like probably like an 11th hour decision, like, just to be safe, throw that on there, because you can see like the gut matter and stuff spurting out of his stomach.
Yeah.
Then issue 6. This is another fun cover, I think. And Ben is not dead. They just faked us out with that moment. The Green Goblin tells Ben that he's the clone. So just reversing what the Jackal implied while he's torturing him. And the big reveal, this Green Goblin is Harry Osborn.
Dun dun dun.
Which is interesting because, of course, when we were last episode, when we were talking about some of the alternate endings for the actual Clone Saga, there was at one point some discussion of, is Harry involved in some way? Like, is he Gaunt or something like that?
Right.
But again, this is like what we were talking about at the end of the last issue. I think, didn't he claim he's like the true Green Goblin, or he may have actually even said original Green Goblin when he first came across Ben with his mask on? He at least says like, I am the true Green Goblin or something like that. But
I mean, villains lie, so
I mean, I guess Harry may consider himself the true Green Goblin,
as the one he has is a clone. So
I mean, up until like the end of the Clone Saga, I would say obviously Harry had sort of a longer tenure, and I don't know. I'm not sure if you could make an argument at a certain point in time to say that Harry is like the best Green Goblin or the one true Goblin. But basically, I don't think it really, like, the dialogue between these issues don't really match up. And the clone Norman is just hanging out with Kane, just like staring at this baby that they kidnapped.
They're just chilling.
They're just waiting to eat it.
And Norman's like, Kane, I don't understand your motivation at all. And also, why is my son considering killing an infant? And Kane, like,
Wants to eat it.
Kane gives us some. Kane talks a little bit, but I still don't understand how he's in this position. It doesn't really line up.
Kills the baby, not Harry.
And then the funniest part of this whole series is Harry shooting what you think is just a flare, but it's actually a giant Green Goblin firework in the sky to get Spider-Man's attention, which is hilarious.
Weird flex, but okay.
They tangle for a bit, and then Norman suits up, crashes in, and teams up with Peter Parker and Ben Reilly against his son Harry Osborn. So we have 2 Green Goblins and 2 Spider-Men. And this is the point where it's like, it's so ridiculous. I kind of like it. And it's an interesting sort of alternate take on the Clone Saga, which ties more into the clone stuff, which the end of the Clone Saga kind of just dropped.
Yeah. I kind of like it, I guess.
Yeah, because obviously you can't tie, like in the original Clone Saga, they weren't able to actually tie Norman to the Jackal much, which made it ultimately not the Clone Saga, if you want to get technical. Like, it shouldn't be called that thematically or whatever. And there's a great line from Ben Reilly during this where he says, "I can see how someone can grow to hate this clone thing. It never seems to end."
Yeah.
And
they're right.
these last like 2 issues are where the dialogue and the captions just start trying to nail real hard like the themes and point of this story. Where Norman at one point, he's like, it's all about, or I think it was Harry, he's like, it's all about clones, at least these 6 issues. And then there's a lot of discussion about family and how important family is.
And should the child pay for the sins of the father?
Yes.
I think different characters said those exact lines 3 or 4 different times in this last issue alone.
But Matt, at the end of the day, this story, the saga, it's all about family.
It beats you over the head like crazy.
I mean, you're wearing a Star Wars shirt. You should know that.
But the thing is, the original Clone Saga, there's not really like a point or a theme to it overall. It's very difficult when it's 2 years long, but still, like, again, in a way, like, it's so over the top and campy and kind of bad. But
you might as well have like a text balloon that reads, "This is the moral of the story."
Yeah, but like, I don't know, like, that's kind of how superhero comics work. And obviously Spider-Man does enough of moralizing and over the top lessons. And Harry almost kills Peter with the glider, but the clone Norman jumps in front of it and is killed by his son. So, and then Kane, and the entire time Harry has been threatening, he's like, oh yeah, Kane's over somewhere else, and I'm gonna get him to kill the baby, MJ, and Aunt May. And then Kane just shows up and he's like, oh, here's your baby. And so again, I don't understand Kane's entire like situation in this.
His entire motivation is it's you can paint him as a Sandman from Spider-Man 3. I'm not a bad person.
Yeah. But like it turns face like 3 times across this arc, and it's never clear exactly how Harry has control over him and what he has against him. Kane's role is kind of weird, but also interesting. So the baby's back. We flash forward at some point everything was explained to Aunt May, so she knows about all this clone stuff. And it's joked that like she doesn't fully understand this Ben Riley dude, but she's cool with it. Kane is MIA. Harry is locked up, which I guess we just totally assume happened at the end of the last part.
Yeah.
So the end of the Clone Saga, everyone is alive, everyone's healthy. We have a baby, we have Aunt May, and Ben gets back on his bike for some reason. And
he gets back on his bike to star in his own solo title that will never be released.
Yeah, well, until like 2017 or whatever.
Yeah.
And there's like the final page is he's on his bike, and then everyone is off to the side with the baby. And in silhouette, he's back to the hoodie, I guess.
Well, he said he missed the hoodie.
Yeah. And I guess it's assumed that Pete is going to balance being Spider-Man and a father, but it's not clear. So this could possibly be the end of Peter Parker's Spider-Man story. But then the person who's going to continue being a Spider-Man leaves New York, which would definitely be a weird status quo.
Especially since it's, all about family.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know why Ben left at the end of this.
So they could draw him on the bike again.
Yeah.
Yeah, and have one of those silhouette shots. That's the end of this version of the Clone Saga. It definitely has its pros and cons, mostly pros.
Yeah, it's fine. Like it's not well written. It's not, but
It's not horrible. It's not great.
I think the plot. I mean, obviously, the plot is tighter than the two-year mess we've been reading.
Would you have enjoyed this without having read all of the Clone Saga before this? I don't think you would have.
I don't know.
Well, it's because this is a 6-issue what if story.
Yeah.
Like it really does rely on sitting through 2 years of the Clone Saga. If you read this without that context, it would just seem like a super weird, obviously still out of continuity Spider-Man story.
Yeah.
It's abridged, and I think it works. And I don't think you're missing stuff, but the fact that they refer to tiny things that you are missing because they're assuming that you read the Clone Saga, I don't know that this works on its own.
It is confounding. What's the point of writing a 6-issue mini about how you could have done the Clone Saga if it refers to things that happened in the actual Clone Saga? You still need to read it. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, it is.
What's the point?
Very strange, meta apology / retread. But I think it's just really fascinating that this exists.
Yeah,
It's
I don't
came
know.
out 20 years later too.
What's the point? What's the point of this?
Yeah, and it's also it's not even like it ties into MC2, the Spider-Girl universe, because I think MC2 follows directly from right before the baby's kidnapped, I guess, because I'm pretty certain Ben Riley is dead in the beginning of Spider-Girl stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was half expecting that, where it's okay, at the very end, or is Tom DeFalco going to weirdly jam this into his little pet character / continuity, which I think would have been sort of cool.
I mean, it would have put it somewhere of significance instead of as of right now. It's just I guess a little Elseworlds if you missed the Clone Saga.
Yeah,
which we finished it a week ago. I don't miss it.
Well, again, here's the thing. The Elseworlds / what if thing is important because this totally is not an abridged Clone Saga.
No.
This changes a shitload.
Judas Traveler's not in here. Can you really call it a Clone Saga without Judas Traveler? I don't think so.
I wonder how some of the other Clone Saga writers would feel about this version. What would be DeMatteis's thoughts? without his contributions. But I don't know. I'm kind of glad I read this at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I guess so.
I mean, at this point, it's just on the docket. we read what you tell us.
We've talked a bunch about the writing and kind of the not behind the scenes, but how this fits and what the hell this is. Let's talk a little bit more about Todd Knock and the art. What do you guys think about his Spider-Man, his Kane, his Green Goblin, or the action, just everything on the art side here?
I think it's fine. It looks like Todd Knox art. He has a pretty distinctive style, I think, which is fine. Yeah, that's the guy is fine.
I thought his Spider-Man and action scenes looked good. His Green Goblin's face was a little odd to me, but I thought like the coloring was very weird. And it's just something about Todd Knox faces that are a little odd this first couple issues, but overall, like it's fine. It's not something I'm gonna be like, ooh, it's amazing. Like this series, it exists. It's average. It's gets the job done.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't think he's great, but I think he's good here.
Yeah.
I think he's a solid Spider-Man artist. I think his storytelling is solid. My major nitpick is I thought the webbing is not to my liking at all in this series. Like there are moments where they just like there's just webbing everywhere. Like there's a spammy thing. Like there's a moment in the beginning of the third issue, fourth issue, second issue, whatever, where it opens with Ben running after Kane, and there's just webbing everywhere for no reason. And it's not really positioned in a way where it's like properly affixed to things and everything. It's kind of just like they photoshopped in random web patterns, and the coloration on it and the texture I don't like. But
No.
otherwise I like the art.
And like Mike mentioned it, his cane looks really good. I know it's one of our jokes, but legitimately, I think the panel of Kane pushing the chimney is one of the best panels in the series.
Yeah,
I think it looks really good.
yeah, and there's one panel. It's not super detailed, but the one panel where Kane, Peter, and Ben are just like swinging.
Yeah.
That it's not like it's very simple cartooning, but I like that panel a lot as well. So do you guys have any final thoughts on the real Clone Saga, which also is I'm calling it that. I kind of thought that's what it was called, but it's not.
Just Spider-Man Clone Saga.
But I'm now calling it the real Clone Saga ?
I mean, right, because it's not real in any sense.
Yes.
I'm really more just happy about putting any type of clone stuff really kind of in the rearview mirror at this point, and everything's just kind of tangentially involved now.
Well, we'll see how accurate that is.
But what's next on the docket?
So next, so this was 2009, just because the Clone Saga is over. So let's see the exact same thing differently. Next, we're going back to the 90s.
Oh yeah, missed the 90s.
The next few episodes are sort of tangentially related, which may be a positive for Mike, but also a negative because why are we reading them? We will see. The next episode we will call Only the Evil Return. And this is the return of two major villains, one of which we've already seen the return. But when does Norman Osborn appear next after he kills Ben Reilly? And a villain that died during the Clone Saga, where the hell did they come back from?
Doc Ock?
Yes.
Okay.
Are we going to find out how Aunt May came back to life at all, or are we just not covering that?
We will get to that. And that's one of the episodes which arguably, well, that'll be the one after.
Okay.
Maybe the next one. And that sort of has connection to the Clone Saga, but not really, but we will determine that.
All right.
All right.
So everyone, thanks for watching and tune in next time. Peace.
Adios.